Hi, partners. Good afternoon, or possibly good morning or evening, depending on where you're tuning in from. We are so glad you're here today. We immensely value our partners, and we're thrilled to give you this sneak peek into the hiring module that will be formally announced to the market next month. This is our all-in-one HCM plus hiring solution, taking us one step further in offering a true hire to retire people lifecycle management offering. Okay, I'm not going to take up too much of our time so we can get to the good stuff. Here is what we will cover today. I'm going to do some introductions. We're going to set the stage for a few minutes to talk briefly about our journey to developing this tool, what hiring is solving for, and its key benefits. And then you're going to see it in action. I just want to remind you to post comments and ask questions in the chat. It should be along the toolbar at the bottom. Myself and our team are going to be watching closely, and we hope to save a few minutes at the very end to address a few of these questions. But for those that we do not get to, I will be sure to route them to your dedicated partner manager who will be in touch. Also, if you have to hop off early, there's no worries. We'll send the recording to all those who registered within 24 hours. And I will also be posting this recording to the resources section in PartnerStack under product materials within the day as well. Okay, let's do some intros. I've met many of you, but for those of you who do not know who I am Brianne Murphy, Partner Marketing Director at HiBob, owning the marketing strategy for our partner programs globally, and I sit in NYC. I'll be somewhat moderating today, but the true star of the show is Martin Burge. Martin is our hiring visionary. He led the team in development of this module and is going to give us a glimpse inside his genius and walk us through the platform. So Martin, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to you.
Thank you for the intro. So yes, I've been with HiBob now for about 15 months, and this is everything that I and the team have been working on, and we're excited to share it. So, just going to start again, a bit of background on us, and I think when we look over the last kind of 4 years, it's been very varied growth on one side and uncertainty on the other, and so for 2024, it's a year that we look at smart scaling or scaling smartly. The key takeaway here is that, of course, people are at the heart of every company. They are the number one asset. Companies spend 60 to 70% of their money on people, and of course, you need great people to grow your business. Looking at recruiters for a second, they were surveyed at Aptitude Research in 2023 about the top priority items. 49% employee retention and 45% of quality of hire. But specifically, there was one item that was not in the top, that it was in the previous year, and that was efficiency. And we believe that changes because talent acquisition leaders are now being held accountable for what happens beyond when a candidate accepts an offer. They also quoted that companies that improve their quality of hire are 5 times more likely to see an improvement in first-year retention. If we want to take that concept a little bit further, it essentially puts recruitment and retention as 2 sides of the same coin. They're intertwined with like equal importance and complexity, and if you do one without the other, then you have a problem. A great hiring strategy is good, but if everyone leaves after 3 months, then it doesn't serve you well. And if you have high retention rates, then that's a great thing. But if you're unable to bring in the people that you need, you're unable to grow, and that can have impacts on the business. And so businesses need the ability to cultivate like a really deep understanding of their people data. Otherwise, they'll struggle to find out what drives success and high performance. And so we think that success in talent acquisition is not going to be gauged on speed and cost effectiveness, but more about that ability to link together recruitment and retention and make kind of informed and intelligent decisions based on kind of key accurate data. And that's where we see HiBob coming in, specifically on our strategic hiring. And so our hiring model is not just another product, but it's a completely different solution and a way that we hope will redefine some of the ways that both hiring and talent management takes place. So we believe that it kind of positions us uniquely in the market with limited challenges, creating a really compelling narrative and demonstrates our commitment to product innovation as well as customer-centric design. So an all-in-one HR and hiring solution combines some key things here like unified data, process efficiency, and candidate experience. And I'm going to go on just to talk about some of the key values that we believe that our solution can bring. The first is having data all in one place. Having spent a lot of time myself speaking with customers and prospects over the time that I've been here, one of the quotes that really kind of stood out to me, we had a company say to us that they felt that they were data rich, but information poor. Companies are sometimes trying to look for that needle in a haystack, but that could be distributed over many sources, and that's even if they're looking in the first place. Many of them are unable to connect what they do in hiring accurately to performance or retention, and that's a real lost opportunity. And they ended up with like disjointed information, trying to compare apples with oranges. It makes it really difficult to draw conclusions. And of course, when this is trying to feed into a strategic plan, then it's hard to have confidence in that. And having all the data under one roof and not needing the likes of a Power BI or a Tableau or a data lake, to bring all of that together. But it's not just that, you also need the infrastructure, the knowledge, the maintenance to make that all work. And if we believe we can bring something that can provide some strategic advantage. And the bottom line is that too many systems can prevent a reliable kind of life cycle analytics. The second we look at is of course tech stack reduction. I think you can see the quotes from Josh Bersin here that many companies have far too many tools that are kind of strung together to create that kind of complex patchwork. And not only does this have cost a tremendous amount of money, but it also complicates things like operations and security. You need more people to run it, you introduce new risks, and it can hamper collaboration between teams, potentially unnecessarily. Our customers, HireBob customers, have already seen the value that it can be brought by having core HR and comp and time and attendance and goals, all under one system. And we believe that there's more to go in having everything in one place. The last here is a consistent user experience, and I think when people talk about HireBob, people see that user experience is key to what we do. But I want to take an example of a company that has multiple best-in-class solutions. Each system itself can introduce friction, new user interface, user experience, navigation. How do I log in? Do I have the right access? And each one of those will result in a loss of productivity because of context switching, needing to learn about how to use it. That in itself leads to dissatisfaction with outputs. I mean, if it's slow to see any results or it's time consuming, you can see how that can lead to dissatisfaction. And unfortunately, the very end of this, you get some that have disengagement or at least disconnection to the process. And this is often results in pushing work onto others because it's hard for people to be to self-serve. And in the long run, it's absolutely worth trading off a few features for higher usability and better adoption, specifically in the hiring space. If companies want buy-in from hiring managers, which traditionally in the market are the major blocker to getting hiring done in an efficient way, they need to lower the friction. And in doing that, they can take that away and give a good and familiar user experience, and that takes away some of the traditional hurdles or boundaries that a hiring manager has to face when using a system that they may not use multiple times, be in the system regularly. If they're only hiring once or twice a year, then they're only coming into this process not regularly enough to learn, and therefore having that consistent user experience for them removes those hurdles of how do I get productive quicker. So those are some of the things that we feel our solution will bring. Now, I want to move on to the journey of a position, because I think it's critical to this overarching strategic hiring. And for many, planning isn't, in some cases, isn't done, or isn't done at all well, or it's done kind of in spreadsheets. And if that planning is either taking place at all, you have issues like, it's all going through a spreadsheet. It makes it challenging to communicate. Everything's a mess until you're forced to put it into a system, and finally you need tight communication about all the people on those plans, and those are the challenges if you're doing this offline. Now, as I'm sure many are aware, we have a product that resolves this in workforce planning. But then now this opens up another bunch of questions here. Now that you have a plan and you have a system, and some of those issues around communication and working together on the plan and keeping it in a good form and a good shape and something that's referenceable, you end up with now a new set of questions. How do I get the information from my workforce planning into my hiring system? At the moment, positions are essentially kind of transferred, you could argue thrown over the fence, to another system, and hoping that they land, because again, you're trying to connect multiple systems. And the next is, but what if my systems become out of sync? It can happen, and it does happen. It's ultimately different teams who work together on, different, your core HR from an applicant tracking system. Maintenance now becomes an issue, and then it's like, well, how do I understand how things are progressing? Where are we with our plan? Not many systems are going to pull data out of their applicant tracking system into their hiring, into their workforce planning, and of course the last phase is, have we found somebody yet? Have we found the person we want to hire? So we see that with hiring under the same roof and working in tandem with workforce planning, we believe we can produce a kind of streamlined process that's all talking from the same data set, and can provide some of those and answer some of those questions that would traditionally be asked. And then, yes, we found somebody, great. And now, so the next stage is it moves away from, recruitment. We've done that bit, and now it's into retention, and that has to be a smooth transition. And even though that transition takes place, the question that we walk away from here is, how do I track the progress? How do I, understand what success looks like through all of that? And so we see this in two places. One, the first is monitoring of that plan. So of course, why monitor the plan? Yearly headcount plans are great. It helps company understand where they're going, but they're useless if they're thrown into a bin and never looked at again. If they become tick box exercises, then they're doing it for doing its sake. And without having that plan, you risk overlooking kind of critical areas of the organization that may not be growing as expected. Again, you may have a great plan at the beginning of the year, but if you don't know where you are with that plan, there's risks that are introduced. And of course, if any risk to hiring can hinder the business from achieving its goals. The benefits of being able to monitor those plans is bringing accuracy and clarity to process that, as we've shown, sometimes imprecise. Having collaboration between multiple teams, FP&A, finance, hiring leaders, to share a unified view of the world. A company can more easily identify areas that they're lagging behind. So visualization of the plan versus kind of actual. And of course, one of the main goals here is being reactive is costly, but being proactive can really add value. You know types of roles you're looking for in the future. You know when you want to fill them. You can start looking, start sourcing. You could look internally first and understand if you have great internal mobility. But a plan has to be agile. And agile here, I mean, kind of real time. It needs to react to market conditions, budget changes, internal shifts, priorities, many things that it has to react to. And so to give you a view here of, again, where we see the product maturing into, on the left is an example of where I have multiple jobs open at any one time. And by collecting data, I'm starting to understand, am I on track? Where should I focus my effort? If I'm focusing my effort on, job number 5, I might be wasting my time in comparison to job number 3. But having that and having a live plan helps me do that. And then on the right, keeping on top of budgets, seeing how effective you are from requesting position approvals all the way through to feeling like where might my bottlenecks be. Monitoring the plan is just one part, and the other, again, is an area of focus for us, is a focus on quality. Now, quality can be defined in a whole host of ways, ranging from the super simple all the way up to the really complex. And again, we've spoken to many customers on all parts of that spectrum. But if we orientated this towards, say, new hires, linking this to first year turnover, if you defined quality based on where a candidate is once they've been hired, having hiring and core HR data together, we have the ability to see where's that candidate 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, a year, potentially more. But also quality orientated towards maybe the source of a candidate, linking the situations of those candidates back to where they came from. So if I'm looking at candidates that have been successful in my organization and I take that all back to where we got them from, again, if I was a guessing man, I think a lot of that would come down to maybe referrals. There's a lot of data in the market that suggests that, but that may not be the case in a specific organization. But being able to connect all the way back to source, right the way to success, can be defined. Again, quality and the data to do that, being in one place will certainly help. And although many organizations that we have spoken to aren't even doing anything, as the hiring platform within Bob grows, we hope to raise all boats by introducing ways to consider quality that everyone can then benefit from. And for those that are super complex, longer term, it's giving them the tools that they need to define what their quality is in their organization. So, of course, your user experience is critical. I'm not going to sit here and read this quote out, but it would be remiss of me to not talk about user experience as part of our platform, our hiring platform, and strategic hiring as a whole. Of course, the first part of this is the Bob experience for hiring teams. So my definition here of a hiring team is anybody involved in the hiring process, whether that's recruiters, interviewers, evaluators, coordinators, hiring managers, allowing them to be able to do what they need to do through desktop, like they do with everything else, but also to support kind of key flows through mobile, so they can do some of that stuff on the go. Having interviews synced with their calendars, being able to work with the calendar as well as with the system. And of course, having kind of notifications. That a lot of that is an extension of everything that Bob is today. But the second part, and I kind of come back to our two sides of the same coin. We have our candidate experience as well as our employee experience. So for candidates, first impressions count. It's important that a candidate gets as good an experience as they can out the gate. I think a lot of them are not shy about jumping on Glassdoor when they have a bad experience. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that will turn into super positive experience, because people don't tend to leave positive reviews anywhere on any platform. But if we can take away some of those negative reviews, can have a real impact to the organization and just a candidate feeling that they don't throw their CV into a black hole, never even to know whether it was accepted or how it's being progressed. There are many systems out there in the market today that don't focus on the candidate experience. For us, it's equally as important as the employee experience that Bob's known for. And employees, again, are an important part of this whole hiring process. It's not a process that's just reserved for recruiters, and that's it, and talent acquisition teams. At the end of the day, employees, and I like to use the term hiring is a team sport, and it is a team sport. It requires so many different players, if you follow my analogy. But the experience that employees have, they want to know whether their organization cares about internal mobility, potentially having opportunities to apply for jobs before they hit the open market. Any internal hire, a promotion from within itself reduces costs and increases kind of culture and value, and people feeling like they have mobility in their roles. But also, employees that work for a company that love that company and enjoy being part of that organization also tend to know people. And so making that process of referrals, getting referrals into the, recommending people for your organization, referrals is a super social thing. And this is something that really aligns with the Bob values. So along the way, and I've alluded to it up until now, but I think it's an important point, is that we have very much spent a lot of time working, with customers and prospects to understand as we've developed the solution. We've run a number of different roadshows with customers. We've done a lot of face-to-face ones. These few quotes in here came from a week-long face-to-face session. We met with over 11 customers, but we've run this in the UK, in Tel Aviv, in the Americas, and it's just our commitment and our continued commitment to talking with customers constantly to learn and build. We think all feedback, all feedback is good feedback. And then, of course, we as we approach launch, we have informed customers that we are working on this. And here's just a few of the reactions that we've had. I think people have been very excited for the product and excited to understand more about it. And it's made some customers look at what they have today to see whether if they may be happy, but could they be happier? So I think the sentiment has been really positive up until this point. And then I'm sure the point why the majority are here is to see what we're up to. So if you give me a second to switch my screens.
While Martin's doing that, just reminding everybody on, feel free to post questions and chat, make comments. Love to hear what you're thinking as you see more.
Fantastic segue. Thank you very much. Okay, so hopefully everyone can see my screen. This is my environment of Bob. Now, you might assume that where I would start any of these demos would be in hiring. I'm not going to. I'm going to start in our workforce planning product. So to set the scene a little bit, just to give enough kind of relevance to what I'm going to show you, let's assume that you've been through the planning process, whether that's a planning event or ad hoc events or ad hoc requests, and now I have a set of positions that I now want to hire for. And the system can be flexible in a number of ways. So when I look at this list, let me take this HRBP role. The first thing I'm going to do here is this is where we see customers who want to run their planning processes and their hiring processes in parallel. So they don't want one to hold up the other. Of course, those two processes need to come together before an offer is made. So in this example, I have a position, it's already ready to, it's been approved, budgets, where it sits in the organization. I'm actually gonna just attach it to this HR business partner role. So those planning process and the hiring processes can run in parallel. And like I say, have to come together at the last minute. We see that as companies grow in size, they tend to change that paradigm just a little bit. And the other version of this is where you want your planning process and your hiring process to work sequentially. So in this case, I have this role that I want to hire for, and I don't want the process to start until the planning process is complete. So we're going to follow this one in a second, but essentially that role has been used to trigger the creation of a job opening that then somebody's going to, in the talent acquisition team, would then pick up and finish off. So hopefully what this showcases is that, this is the workforce planning product that's been around for, for a while, but how it works directly with our hiring module. Now I'm going to jump into hiring. So there's a couple of things you'll notice on this screen. First and foremost, you have a good number of analytics to start the process with. We look at application funnel, how many job openings, how many people. We have some efficiency metrics on here as well. Some of these are relevant to just if you have workforce planning. Certainly time for approval is a metric that tells you how long it took from the point a position was requested to being approved, because it's relevant in terms of your time to hire. You can see my time to fill numbers is not as low as we'd want it to be. My average jobs have been open for a while, but hopefully it gives you an understanding of how this works. So you can see that position, that product manager role that I created directly from workforce planning is ready to be picked up from here. Alternatively, if this isn't being used with our workforce planning product, then you can just go ahead and start creating job openings. And this is a relatively quick process because I have all of my site and department details already in the platform. If I'm using the job catalog, then again, I have that as a reference point. And just as a last point, if I am using workforce planning, I can work the other way and I can connect a position that I already have signed off in workforce planning. If both your planner and your talent acquisition person is the same person, they can do that quite quickly from here. So the key steps for us is we want to collect the right level of information from candidates, and so there's lots of options here for configuring this application form. If I wanted to add in things like photos or LinkedIn. I move my Zoom link, I can add those. I can certainly play around with how that looks and those fields. I can either ask the candidate to populate fields on an application form, which is again very traditional. You'll see here that the system is built to not ask for a resume by default, and we certainly see the industry moving towards that direction. But if you do one click and you're now asking the candidate for a resume, and if I click that again, I can actually ask for very refined documents. Please give us details of your work if I wanted to. So it's not just support for resume, but support for other documents. And then, like most applicant tracking systems, we do support screening questions. The one most traditional here is, do you have a right to work in this location? I can define the options that I am providing to the user. I can use this or no, need support. And if I toggle this button here, I can actually set the no, I need support to help to disqualify this candidate as a way of improving the screening process and do some of that screening where you have absolute red lines, things you won't accept from a candidate. When I hit save here, I gain a couple of additional features. I can define an automatic rejection email for any of those that are screened out by the system. and of course I can delay that. The key thing here is that you have flexibility to select the right information, resume or not, ask screening questions, as well as doing rejections. For us, we've always taken this process, this job opening process, to be something that should happen quickly, because the reality is the better value add for teams is to actually process candidates and not be spending time setting jobs up. And therefore, in terms of the pipeline of candidates here, we have this built so that you have templates that you defined in the system, and therefore then they're just being selected on here to be, as you can see, I have a number of roles here, everything except new, offer, and hired. Those three are fixed, but everything else is completely under the control of the organization. But again, our encouragement here is to think about how they want to process their candidates, be consistent, whether that's by department, by site, by whatever is relevant for them, but to be consistent. And that will help longer term with data analytics. Then as we get to hiring team, we have a very straightforward principle, which is that you don't get access to a job opening unless you are granted a role. That may seem manual, but this is where you start to see some of the additional value of having everything in one place. The system has a number of roles out the box, but customers are able to configure additional roles as well as modify the permissions of the out of the box roles. For anybody here, I need to at least select one owner of that role, but I also have the ability to use any of the data on the platform to define who should also get access to this role. So that criteria I just set of everyone in the HR department, the system's gone away and establish how many people should get that role, but we'll consistently then check so that if that team becomes 2 in future or 4, the system handles all of that that management. So this is very much a kind of set up once and then not have to come back to this job opening wizard too many times. The last step is that we do support offer generation in the platform, and so having approvals that take place is important. So I'm just going to select an approval flow. This one, meaning that whenever an offer is triggered, it's going to go to Joel for approval. Advantage of selecting these flows from here is that we're able to, if there's a change and it's not Joel, let's say Joel wins the lottery and leaves the organization, then we're able to quickly replace that in a centralized place, knowing that when the next offer is requested and for approval, it just picks up the latest version. So I'm going to hit done. Now, as I say, this was very much a quick process, and although I've spoken through it, it's still only taken me a few minutes at best. I'm going to hit open. And I'll return back to my listing. You can see that I have the details of that position, or that job opening that I'm hiring for, as well as the fact that it's attached to a position with one click. Although somewhat underwhelming because there's no candidates in here, I'm ready to go. So if I have an inbox full of emails from referrals or from agencies or from whoever, I've got to productivity from my recruiter significantly quickly than I would have if I had much more steps. And for those of you, and I'm sure that's a very large number on this call, are familiar with hiring processes, there's probably something that we haven't done yet that most systems will have already done up until this point. And there's a reason for that. I'm going to go up to the top corner here and I'm going to toggle this view away from the candidates view to what we're calling job marketing. Now, the first thing I need to do at job marketing is to create a job description. As much as I'd love to revolutionize the world of hiring, job descriptions for now are absolutely here to stay. But the reason for putting it here is that whether I'm a recruiter doing this, whether I'm a hiring manager writing this, I'm doing it without it holding more things up. If this is in the middle of your setting up job process, I'm probably going to skip through it quite quickly. It might not get the attention that it deserves. But here, I can spend 20 minutes here if I so wanted. I could spend longer. And then as we introduce our AI technology into this screen as well, again, we get a good trade-off of not forcing you to come through this screen and skip over it. Spend the time that you need and then give you the tools to help reduce that time. So I'm going to do the one thing I just said I wouldn't, but I think it would be a pretty boring demo if I sat here and wrote a job description. So now that I've created this job description, what you'll start to see here is our job marketing control panel. Think of this as a one-stop shop for how you promote a job, but also how do you look at the success of that job? How is it going? And although this screen here doesn't have the data in it just yet, for the purposes of this, here's one I prepared earlier. So what you're seeing now is this is a job that I've had open for a fair amount of time. I've had 30 applicants. I've spent some money on job boards. I promoted this heavily through referrals, but also in a number of other places. And then this gives me the visibility over time based on how many and the different sources of candidates coming in. So I get a really good overview of everything. But if I want to dive now deeper into specific channels, so if I take referrals, now when I dive into this tab, I have the ability to showcase the referrals that have come through. I have all the people in the organization who have we've sent referrals out to, where they have candidates, where they are in the process, how that divides out into the organization. And you'll see with each of the tabs that appear at the top is an opportunity for the organization not just to dive into the data of the applicants coming in, but in the case of maybe if I want to advertise, I now can choose to advertise, in this case on a job board. We have a marketplace of over 2,000 plus sites across the world distributed, and therefore we bring that marketplace ad hoc purchases right to where the user wants them. And we see this happen in a couple of places, either the customers want to use this for the entirety of their marketing of their jobs, but also if they have contracts with big organizations, they may use this to kind of top up and say, when we haven't found the candidates that we're looking for. I could easily spend at least another, half an hour just talking about the ways that a job can be advertised. But hopefully from this screen, you get a really good understanding of the fact that we give a lot of flexibility. We open up a number of channels, and we will continue to open up channels along the way for our customers to be able to take benefits from, all in light of being able to get candidates into the system for them to process. So I'm going to jump to this particular job opening, and you can see here that I have my pipeline all pre-configured. I've got loads of candidates that are going through that process. This is a particular candidate that I have at the minute. So you're seeing the details of their CV. You're seeing any screening questions that they've answered. If we've asked them to fill out forms, fields on the application form, you kind of get to see all of that front and center. One of the nice things that you can see, I have a few comments here already. Yes, I can use this to provide notes, but if I was to pick someone in the organization, like I have below, take a look at this candidate. Again, one of the values of having this all under one roof is that this is now Sarah's going to get a notification. And so when Sarah logs into the system, in her notifications, just on the left, she's then going to have that link to say there's a comment for you to go action, and she's one click away from there to get right to this screen and to be effective. And this is where we feel a lot of the value will come, because most people are not traditionally going to be surfing through their applicant tracking system on a Friday afternoon. I mean, it's simply not Amazon, but are they likely to be in the HireBot platform because they want to submit holiday, they need to approve holiday, they're doing performance, they're doing any number of things that they would traditionally be doing in the platform? They're more likely to be there. And if we can shorten, as we are with this example, to get them to the candidate, then we increase and remove some of the barriers that sometimes get in the way of people being effective, and we get them to be productive quickly. That 5 minutes to quickly look through that candidate and say, brilliant, schedule them an interview. That's where we think that, we know that we can save time. I'm going to jump to interviews because I think interviews is a really key part here. So the system supports the kind of setting up of interviews. The assumption at this point is that you have agreed with the candidate that they're going to meet at 12 o'clock tomorrow. So, I'm going to pick a couple of my interviews from my hiring team. I'm going to click this viewing calendar. Of course, if I don't have my Google Workspace or Office 365, but if I did, this calendar would populate with all of the free and busy time slots. I can simply just choose the slot that I want in which to schedule this interview. And there's a couple of little bits of information that we pull from our platform. We know based on the configuration what are working days and what are not. Again, a little piece of information to help streamline this process. And also because we know where every single interviewer is in the world based on the site that they're recorded in. And this is 10 o'clock in the morning for Martin, but if I switch this to Alan, it's actually 6 o'clock in the morning for him. So again, another small feature that we're able to help people to schedule interviews in the best possible way. I have a few basic pieces of information. I want to draw your attention now to this evaluation section. And what's important to us is that if most evaluations take place off the back of interviews, so you absolutely should be scheduling them both together. So through these toggles, and I can select scorecards, I'm able to create the evaluations off the back of this interview without having to go and do something separately. And it also means if I move this interview forward, I change one of the interviewers, it actually tidies up all of the requisite evaluations so that the system keeps clean. And you don't, as a recruiter, doesn't have to do that. Last step here, I have an email template already set up. So one click and I can hit send. And then that's then going to schedule the interview, send the details out to the candidate, to the interviewers. And if I tick this emails tab, we've got the email that went to the candidate to say we'd received their application. We keep a record of the email that went out to the candidate to say, this is your interview, and I can send emails out from here. So I have a couple of emails already pre-configured with attached PDF files. I can schedule those, and when I hit send, essentially this is all kept and threaded within the system, so the system becomes the single source of the truth. Now, I'm going to just touch back on evaluation. So you can see where I set up that interview. It's created the two evaluations. But let me show you what those evaluations look like with scorecards. So for those of you familiar with the Bob platform, this should look familiar. And back to my original point about consistent user experience. For those who have to complete an evaluation, maybe they're not traditionally involved in a hiring process, there's no hurdle for them to have to learn. There's nothing new for them to learn. They should be familiar with this based on if they've ever completed a survey within the organization. There's so much flexibility here that I can't show it all. And I'm just going to fill this out. And then when you see that now, we have a kind of qualitative assessment of the candidate. Genuinely, what did they think? Should we continue? What comment did they leave? But also, as long as you've used a rating scale in the system, we keep an average score, and that score gets tracked along the way. Lots of flexibility here. Lots of automation that can take place. Certainly, if somebody needs to fill out an evaluation, we don't have to grant them access to this entire pipeline. So I'm going to skip now just to the hired stage. So I have two candidates here. This is one candidate that we are going to hire now. When I hit create user profile, the system is asking me now for what new hire template I want to use. And again, this is that connection between the hiring module and the rest of core HR. And because if you go right back to the beginning of the demo, we talked about positions. Because I have 2 positions allocated on this role, I'm being forced to select the position that this particular user that's going to go into. And the reason for that is that once we hit continue, that's then going to feed the data all the way back into workforce planning, and therefore my plan gets updated instantly. I now can see if I'm hiring for 10 roles, then one of those 10 is now filled, and I get to see that in my plan, even if I don't have access to this pipeline view. And once that process has taken place and new hire flow is completed, again, here's one I prepared earlier. This is Matteo. He's been through the process. He's been successful. This little chip that I'm hovering over now gives your recruiters and your talent acquisition team confidence that the data for this person has made it into core HR, and this is not just a simple flag that says yes. This is actually Matteo's record in core HR, and I am one click, if I hit view profile, to going to see Matteo's record. And I've got basic information here about who he reports to and everything else. But again, that takes that process all the way and means you know that you've been successful. And again, if you was also doing an HR role, I can hit view profile and then go and take actions on Matteo's employee record, not just the candidate record that you're seeing here. So there is so much more that I could absolutely share, but I think this kind of gives a really good overview, not just of what we have, but also the direction that we're taking within the overall product.
That's great. Thank you so much, Martin. We had quite a few questions come into the chat, which is awesome. I'm going to pose just a couple for time's sake, and then we'll be following up with everyone that we're not able to get to at this time. So just to start, let's see, let me pop it right back up. Will the new hire, the employee created, be triggered only at the end of the hiring flow? I think we just covered this, but wanted to be clear. Or will the record be created initially, kind of like a draft?
Nope. So the process here is that they are a candidate for the duration of the process that they're in hiring, and only then when we're hiring that person do you trigger new hire flow. That then creates the employee record. It creates it in hired status. One of the parts of new hire flow, I have to put a start date in. In my person's case, their start date isn't for a while, so they'll remain in hired status for a period of time. But of course, once they then have started, that status in that hover over shows employed, I think is the status change. So we're not creating like draft employees. We have a very distinct candidate record and a very distinct employee record. And we have a connection between the two that's kind of created either when we hire them or ultimately if they're an internal employee, we'd also have that connection.
That's great, even better. I believe you spoke on this as well, a bit about qualifying or disqualifying questions, but will there be salary specific expectation questions? Maybe that's something that they can customize and include?
Yeah. So the functionality is there to ask questions that are either free text, questions with multiple choice. That was the one you saw me go through, as well as just simple yes and no. So the customer, any user can put whatever questions they like. We're not dictating that. If they wanted to use a salary expectation field for that, that would be completely within the company's control. And that's similar again to the rest of the industry. But again, a lot of functionality, and although we're still very early in our in our kind of growth, we're likely to add some additional features into that screening question phase, potentially in towards a library of questions to select from. But for now, they can input any question that they like.
Great. Are interviewers able to see each other's evaluations, or is that only at the final stage?
Interviews is a good one. I know that there's a product on the market that I'm familiar with where interviewers get access to the entirety of the pipeline. So in our case, you have two options. You can add the interviewer to see the pipeline, and therefore, if they can see it, then they will be able to see any completed evaluations from others. But if you don't want or need interviewers to get access to the pipeline, you just want them to complete an evaluation for the interview that they were involved in, the system creates that as a task. And therefore that task just gives them the evaluation to fill out, it gives them some basic candidate information, but they don't get access to anything else. So it can be used in a number of different ways depending on how the organization wishes to work.
Great, got it. Yeah, you know what, I think for timing's sake, we're going to close it out here, but really appreciate going through this, Martin. Thank you all so much for joining today. We hope that you engage and help us share the news when our formal announcements kind of splash across the digital skies in about a month. Yeah, Martin worked really hard, so we do hope that you engage with HiBob when that news comes out. And at that point, we'll be providing additional resources to you all as well, so that you can learn more about the product capabilities and be able to best position HiBob to your audiences. So watch for that communication. And again, we are saving all these questions. We will follow up directly with you after, and there's a lot more to come. This is only the beginning. Thanks so much for joining, and we really deeply appreciate you all for being a HiBob partner. Cool. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day.